Welcome to a special presentation for Screech at the Reach, the Creatures of Halloween. My name is Pauline Schaefer from the Reach Museum in Richland, Washington. And this presentation was created by our partners at U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who manage the Hanford Reach National Monument. So what is the Hanford Reach National Monument? It is 196,000 acres. That's about 300 square miles of protected land surrounding the Hanford site in eastern Washington. Currently, over 66,000 acres of the monument are open to public use for hiking, wildlife observation, and fishing. In fact, the Hanford Reach is a very important spawning site for fall Chinook salmon. To some people, the dry shrub steppe habitat may look barren, but the monument is alive with wildlife. This includes 44 invertebrate species never before seen and named by science, 43 different kinds of fish, 224 bird species regularly seen, 17 reptiles and amphibians, and 44 different mammals. But first, back to those salmon that spawn this time of year. Pacific salmon spawn only once at the end of their lives. Using a special sense of smell, they find their way back to the river where they hatched, all the way from the ocean. As they make this journey, they no longer eat anything, using stored fat for energy. Robust silvery fish turn into living zombies, their bodies wasting away as they struggle against the current and over obstacles. Their tails become tattered from making nests in the gravel, and males grow fearsome jaws, hooked jaws, that they use to fight with each other. After spawning, they swim aimlessly until they die. But these zombie fish that wash up on the shore are actually an important food source for eagles and other scavengers. On the monument in the fall, coyotes can be seen feasting on dead salmon to fatten up for the winter. Spiders are a great Halloween creature. It's a common myth that a spider's bite can be deadly to humans, and that spiders come into your house to get out of the cold during the fall. The cobwebs that you see as Halloween decorations are from an orb-weaving garden spider, not a spider you'd likely see indoors. In fact, spiders that you find in the house are usually different species adapted to living indoors, and other spiders prefer to stay outside. They aren't looking for warmth, and in fact, they need the wetter habitat that they find outside. It's too dry in the house for them. As far as spider bites, they're actually very rarely deadly. Only a very small number of people die from spider bites, mostly from a spider called the brown recluse, which we don't have in the Pacific Northwest, and usually from allergic reactions. The hobo spider that you see on the right here has been blamed for lots of bites that cause health problems, but we're still learning about them. It's native to Europe, but has ended up here in the Northwest. The black widow spider is one to avoid because its venom can make you sick. Spiders overall are helpful because they eat so many insects in the yard and in your house. Even hummingbirds need spiders because they reuse bits of spider web to stick their nests together. We know of 921 different species in Washington state, and more than half of those are here on the east side. When Mount St. Helens erupted back in 1980, spiders were among the first living things to return to the blast zone. They use silk to create something like a parachute, and the wind will blow them to new places. Many of our Halloween Traditions in America are from Celtic and other Northern European cultures, and so many of the animals associated with Halloween have stories from those cultures as well. Ravens, for instance, are important in Celtic mythology, linked to darkness and death, especially the death of warriors in battle. A raven calling over your house is considered an omen of death. In many Native American cultures, the raven is magical and may be a messenger spirit. To the Welsh, ravens are the totem of the god Bran the Blessed, the protector of the Brits. So 7 ravens from Wales and Scotland are kept at the Tower Hill in London to protect the country from invasion. Ravens are associated with death because they're often found scavenging around dead animals. But they're known for being intelligent and sometimes even tricky. They have been seen and studied using simple tools to get their food, hiding their food from others, and even if they know they're being watched, pretending to put their food in one place, but then actually hiding it somewhere else. Ravens and crows have a complex language, and they can recognize human faces, so I think it's a good idea to be nice to them. Let's talk toads. Toads are thought of as an animal that a witch or a wizard might have as a familiar, feeding it blood or using bits of it in potion. If you touch one, ooh, you might get warts. But the reality is, toads are a welcome animal to have in the garden because they eat not blood, but lots of different arthropods, such as ants and scorpions and sow bugs, but also spiders and even bees. And they do have a poison in special glands on their neck and shoulders that makes them not taste good to predators. And although their skin is quite lumpy, you won't get warts by handling one. I would still wash my hands though. That is the howl of a wolf, an animal which does not live on the monument now, but used to live throughout Washington. In many mythologies, gods could take the shape of a wolf to bring death and destruction. A Celtic goddess considered the queen of winter rides a wolf and brings the darkness during the cold seasons. So many cultures have supernatural stories of people who turn into wolves, like werewolves, that there's a name for it, lycanthropy. Even though there are so many stories like this, wolves tend to avoid humans and they're not likely to attack people. We can continue to keep wolf attacks rare by making sure that we don't habituate them to people. That means people should never leave food out for them, including trash, just as we should do to avoid feeding bears. And although they resemble dogs, they are not interested in being friends with people. If encountered, you react like you would with a black bear or cougar. That means you stand tall, act aggressively, and back away slowly rather than running. Wolves hunt cooperatively to catch large animals such as elk and deer, but they will also take smaller prey. Preying on livestock is rare, but it does happen. Recent wolf counts have confirmed that only just over 100 wolves live in Washington in 21 different packs. They were once widespread, but settlers removed them by hunting and trapping and poisoning wolves. By the 1930s, they were nearly wiped out in the state. Once they became protected under the Endangered Species Act, wolves began to come into Washington from nearby areas where they were reintroduced. But they're all still the native northwestern wolf subspecies. Since they are an endangered species, it is illegal to kill or harm or harass or trap them. Though some ranchers and farmers are often concerned about wolves killing their animals, in their habitat, they keep the population of elk and deer at a healthy level. That was the call of the great horned owl and the screech owl. Owls have inspired so many myths and stories throughout the ages. Since they can see in the dark and move about at night so freely and stealthily, people have been spooked by them at times, but others respect them for these abilities. Ancient Romans looked at owls as an omen of impending death or defeat in battle, but the ancient Greeks considered them good omens and symbols of wisdom. They protected them as the familiars of the goddess Athena. You might hear that call of the western screech owl in your neighborhood. There are seven different owl species that you can find on the monument, including that snowy owl call that you just heard, although those only come around every few years or so. And they range greatly in size, from the northern saw-whet owl, which is about the size of a robin, to the great horned owl that stands 22 inches tall. Why are they so good at living in the dark? Well, an owl's eyes are enormous in relation to the size of their body, allowing more surface area to detect light. The back of an owl's eye, the retina, has a lot of rod-shaped cells which are sensitive to low light, more than human eyes do. They also have a special reflective surface behind the retina called a tapetum lucidum, which helps to bounce more light back to the retina. You can see this as eye shine in many nocturnal animals if you direct a light straight at their eyes. An owl's eyes are fixed in place, pointing straight ahead, but they have extremely flexible necks, so they can turn their heads in nearly every direction, up to 270 degrees. Owls also have special feathers that enable them to fly silently. Their flight feathers, the large ones on the wings, are stiff at the front, but the trailing edge is soft and fringed to reduce air turbulence. Also, soft downy feathers cover the other wing surfaces to dampen the sounds, making these birds of prey great hunters in the dark. That is the screechy call of the barn owl. They prefer to make nests in barns or other structures, even nest boxes, and they're great to have on a farm for rodent control. While owls might be famous for hooting, they can actually make a variety of sounds across the species, including barks, screeches, whistles, and hisses. Those tufts of feathers that you see on top of some owls' heads aren't ears, they're just for looks. Their ears are hidden under the feathers just behind the eyes, and they are extremely sensitive. Many owls have asymmetrically located ears that allow them to pinpoint the location of prey as they listen for them while they hunt. Owl feet are also very strong, and they have a special toe on each foot that rotates position depending on whether they're perching or grasping prey. Of special interest on the Hanford Reach National Monument are burrowing owls, the only owl that nests underground. Using holes dug by badgers and marmots and lately humans, they can find nesting sites even in the shrub steppe habitat where trees are scarce. Burrowing owls are most active at dusk and at dawn, but it's not unusual to see them outside their burrows in the middle of the day. Burrowing owls are pretty small, only about 10 inches tall, and they only weigh as much as a hamburger. They eat beetles, grasshoppers, and other insects, lizards, rodents, and even small birds. Aside from being adorable, even though they're a little bit cranky looking, these owls are special to us here because the Hanford site and the area around the Tri-Cities host the highest concentration of burrowing owls in the whole state. We have a very active research program on these owls, banding them and attaching radio tags so we can track their movements and migrations. They migrate to warmer California and Mexico for the winter. As the population of digging animals gets smaller, people have helped the owls by constructing artificial burrows for them out of things like buckets and big pipes and plastic dog houses. Bats have been for a long time, they've been a part of Halloween folklore. Just like with owls, bats have been feared when they're not understood. Their ability to thrive in the night made some people afraid of them and other people respect them. Ancient Mayan god Camazotz was depicted as part human, part bat, some images looking like a Batman, and was associated with death and human sacrifice. South and Central America is where vampire bats are found, so there might be a connection there. We'll learn more about them later. During the Middle Ages, Europeans thought that bats spread disease, and since anything feared became associated with witches, bats were called the messengers between witches and the devil. And of course, the vampire Count Dracula can transform into a bat. Aside from the mythology, there are also some everyday misconceptions about bats. People say that they are blind as a bat, or they worry that bats will swoop down and get caught in their hair, and that they are a major carrier of rabies. If a bat does fly close to you, it might be that they're catching the flying insects that are gathering around you. Bye-bye mosquitoes. But bats, like other wild animals, avoid humans because they're afraid of us. Healthy bats pose very little threat to people who leave them alone, although they will bite in self-defense if they're mishandled. Bats are definitely not blind. They can see better than we do at night. Their use of echolocation helps them navigate to their prey and around objects. They emit sounds that are so high-pitched we can't hear them. Bats listen to the echoes of these sound waves off of objects to map what's around them. Bat ears are oversized and they have lots of folds in them, like you can see in this Townsend's big-eared bat. Those bumps in there help determine an insect's vertical location in the air, helping distinguish its echo from objects in other directions. They can even tell which direction an insect is moving by using the Doppler effect. Pretty amazing. Less than half of 1% of bats carry rabies, but it is a serious disease that can kill. And that's why we vaccinate our pets against rabies, and why you should never handle a bat with your bare hands, because remember, they can bite in self-defense. Rabies affects mammals, including skunks, raccoons, and dogs, and is carried by saliva, so it's usually spread through a bite. So see a doctor right away if you're bitten by any wild animal, because the vaccine can still protect you before symptoms start. And what about vampire bats? They live in tropical regions of South America, and they do feed on blood from cattle, birds, and even sometimes humans, but no more than 1 to 2 tablespoons of blood per day is what they eat. The victim sometimes doesn't even feel the incision because their teeth are so sharp. Their saliva contains an anticoagulant, which prevents the blood from clotting right away. So they just make a cut and then they lap up the blood as it drips out. Bats live all over the world except the coldest regions, and they make up almost a quarter of the world's mammal species. We have 14 different species of bats on the monument. Bats are fascinating creatures. There are tiny ones such as the Asian bumblebee bat and the African woolly bats that live in spider webs. And then there are huge bats like the flying fox of Southeast Asia. It's a fruit eater and it has a wingspan of over 5 feet. Many bats roost together in caves or other structures, sometimes by the thousands or millions, And when they're flying together, they can be picked up on weather radar. Around the world, fruit bats are essential for pollinating and spreading seeds of many plants that we like mangoes, bananas, and cashews. And bat guano, that's another word for droppings, is a rich fertilizer mined and sold in many countries. Bats eat a lot of flying insects. All Washington bats are insectivores, and they eat at least a third of their body weight each night. Pregnant and lactating bats eat even more. If you were a 150-pound bat, you'd be eating the equivalent of 96 Big Mac hamburgers each day. I hope you have enjoyed learning about our local creatures of Halloween. Thanks so much to Dan Hayes from Visitor Services at U.S. Fish and Wildlife for putting this show together for the Reach Museum's event, Screech at the Reach. Happy Halloween.